Obviously, it is profoundly incorrect to call anyone you dislike a group that you have a religious obligation to exterminate. Jews have been calling Gazans Amalek. But then there is no rabbinical consensus on whether Muslims are, or Arabs or anti-Semites are Amalek. Because if that were the definition, then Jews have a religious obligation to kill anyone who dislikes them. And even if they thought that this was indeed the case, do they have the capacity to carry it out? And would God, if He exists, support them? Those rabbis who have been saying this, who have been calling Gazans or Palestinians or Muslims Amalek, are not enjoying universal support, shall we say. So, in order to undermine this assumption, I wish people would. I wish Muslims were capable of engaging with the arguments, but all they ever do is post more atrocity porn about the destruction and death of Gazans, because they don't even know that most Westerners hate Muslims and don't care if all of them die, and therefore there's no point crying out in rage at the atrocities being committed. Pictures of hospitals and dead babies and bits of dead people being buried under bulldozers. The fact is, Westerners, being mostly atheists and nihilists and Islamophobes and anti-Semites, don't care. To the extent that they find Muslims useful, it is because they can throw the corpses of dead Palestinians at Jews to show how wicked they are. So, my suggestion to Muslims is to take another approach, to take the theological approach. And this must be to use the principles of Judaism against Jews. And this would also mean engaging directly with rabbis rather than secular Jews who have no authority in any case to speak on behalf of Judaism. We should know that but for observant Jews, there would be no secular Jews. Imagine if all Jews were secular, they would in time become extinct, wouldn't they? If all Jews were secular, they would literally be absorbed and assimilated. And therefore, if they have any right to use their identity as Jews and use their Jewish privilege, it is only because there are other Jews, religious Jews, observant Jews, who are prepared to live as Jews, as Orthodox Jews, as ultra-Orthodox Jews, obeying all the rules. But these secular Jews, they don't know anything, do they, really? They will be liberal, they will be secular, they behave no differently from the Western Gentile, and the Western Gentile hates himself. And also hates and rejects liberal democracy. So if Muslims are to win this argument, and I'm only talking about winning arguments, I don't see this dispute as being in any way capable of being resolved by, well, I suppose it could be resolved by World War III, but we don't want that, do we? What we want is for things to calm down and for the unrighteous Jews and unrighteous Gentiles to stand down and go away. So, what are righteous Jews and Gentiles to do? They must win the argument. But they show no signs of being prepared to use any arguments. They will just keep posting their cries of anger and outrage and competing against Jews for greater victimhood. This is, of course, unmanly. And if the battle is to be won, both ideological and military, the justness of the cause has to be clear. So we all know that there is no rabbinical consensus on whether Amalek are still in existence. We know that some rabbis claim them to be extinct. So it's not a group that can be revived at will by Jews who identify groups as being hostile to their interests and wish to exterminate them, because Jews have a religious obligation to exterminate Amalek, and that was why some rabbis over the centuries have said, oh, don't worry, Jews, there is no need to exterminate anybody because they're already extinct. So what is the position? No one knows, because you can't find a supreme authority in Judaism. Of course, you'll be able to find a rabbi who says this and a rabbi who says the complete opposite. But Jews do not have a supreme leader, unlike the Shia. Certainly the Shia in Iran have a supreme leader, so they are fortunate. Christians too have a supreme leader in the form of the Pope, if they are Catholic, and in the form of the Archbishop of Canterbury, if they are Anglican. But really, it doesn't matter what the Pope or Archbishop of Canterbury might say about anything, because we know, don't we, that the Pope and Archbishop of Canterbury submit to the liberal order. The Church is but a creature of the liberal order. And Judaism has no leader. So when Gentiles talk about Jews being powerful, they never really mean the religious Jews, the rabbis, that most people haven't heard of. Can you think of a famous rabbi? Does anybody know off the top of his head? When a Gentile, an anti-Semitic Gentile, talks about powerful Jews, they will be talking about Jews in politics, Jews in the media, public intellectuals who are Jews, but invariably they never even mention rabbis. But if you think Jews are in any way the chosen people of God, they would have to refer to the religious Jews who maintain the collective Jewish identity by submitting to the rules of Judaism and take the trouble to live as a Jew and be restricted by its restrictions. And so the Gentile can easily turn the tables on the unrighteous Jews and the unrighteous Gentiles by talking in terms of the principles of Judaism, because then the rabbis would have to respond. They would have to answer questions. And I know from Duvid that they have a policy of not answering questions, of not engaging with Gentiles. It is their policy. And it is for this reason that only Duvid could be found to debate Daniel Hakikatju on Modern Day Debate. I have made my inquiries of Rabbi Mizrahi, and it doesn't appear that he will be engaging with Daniel Hakikatju. The reasons for that, I imagine, well, I'm familiar with the reasons. So, because of what happened during the dispute of Barcelona and the dispute of Paris, which ended badly for Jews, they don't. Well, you can imagine why rabbis will not engage, because if they win, the Gentile will get angry and take it out on them. And if they lose, then their community will hate them for losing the argument to the Gentile. So it is just better not for them not to engage at all. And this seems to be the policy. But it is shameful, isn't it, that if Jews are so powerful and the people most responsible for maintaining Jewish identity, i.e., rabbis, are too afraid to engage either with me or Daniel Hakikatju, then they're nothing at all, are they? Urgent questions need to be answered. Are Gazans Amalek? And Jews seem to be saying yes and no at the same time. And by passing the buck to each other, they escape scrutiny or accountability. And this cannot continue if you care anything about the Gazans or indeed world peace. So I ask myself why people like Daniel Hakikatju won't engage with me. Perhaps he also fears secular authorities who might be angry with him for being seen to engage with me and my idea, my proposal, my solution of secular Quranism. He knows of me, he admits to receiving emails from me, and even mentions my suggestions, such as debating with Rabbi Mizrahi. But if Rabbi Mizrahi declines the challenge, then what is one to do? Daniel can continue debating with, well, nobody's people who aren't even rabbis. You would have thought one ambitious rabbi might wish to do that. It is true that David has had a rabbinical education, but he is in no way a rabbi, and certainly not a Jew in good standing with his own community. I think Muslims, if they were clever, would keep talking about this rather than posting atrocity videos on Twitter. That would be more constructive. After all, there are quite a few rabbis on Twitter that they could be asking about the no-hide laws. Now, previously I mentioned righteous Jews and Gentiles and unrighteous Jews and Gentiles. And if you were paying attention and of an inquiring mind, you would be asking, how are we to differentiate between righteous Jews and Gentiles and unrighteous Jews and Gentiles? And the solution, the answer is simple. It is their willingness to discuss the no-hide laws. And really, no rabbi is prepared to discuss the no-hide laws at all. Some years ago, I managed to track down Avril Krautz, who was infamous for saying that Jews should sacrifice themselves, should martyr themselves to take a stand against their children in Jewish schools being taught LGBT, about gay marriage and transgenderism. He actually said that, and it was widely reported, and there is a report in the BBC about this Dayan, Rabbi Avril Krautz, who proposed that Jews martyr themselves. So I tracked him down and even spoke to him briefly and asked him about the no-hide laws, and he said it's complicated and I would rather not talk about it. But don't Jews have a religious duty to promote the no-hide laws or talk about them? Excuse me. Where was I? Yes, he wouldn't talk about it, and it would appear no rabbi is prepared to talk about it. And Muslims are just too ignorant of Judaism to actually ask Jews about what they're supposed to believe and do. And they won't talk to me, these Muslims who appear to be so concerned about the Gazans and the future of the world. Daniel Haqiqatjou, for all his eloquence and his following, refuses to engage with me. I wonder why. Fear, refusal to be seen, to be assisting in the propagation of secular Quranism. Who knows? Who knows? But I doubt it would be for a legitimate or honourable reason. And so this is my advice to Muslims, to be more prepared to entertain ideas and arguments instead of being sucked into repetitive behaviour that doesn't do any good. After a while, atrocity porn just doesn't do anything for anyone, and Nobody likes you anyway, and nobody cares if you're all exterminated. They can only wonder at your weakness and divisions. So, as I was saying, Judaism has no leader. The Shias the Muslims are um, are more fortunate in that they have the supreme leader of Iran, Imam Khomeini, and so it could be said that Muslims do have a caliph. Now, why do these Hizb ut-Tahrir people pretend to be sad that the caliphate ended in, was it 1911 or something? Let me just check. I think it was 1922 that the Ottoman Empire was dismantled. So they were, 1922, the 1st of November. Oh, I've got this thing about how 6 reasons why the Ottoman Empire fell. I sort of, it was too agrarian, it wasn't cohesive enough, its population was undereducated, other countries deliberately weakened it, it faced a destructive rivalry with Russia, it picked the wrong side in World War One. There you go. It failed to industrialize. So you, I guess, in global politics, you must keep up with events and make sure that your potential enemies do not have some overwhelming technological advantage over you, such as the Europeans over the Native Americans and Western imperialists over the less developed parts of the world. So we must never sit on our laurels. Or if we want peace, we should we should have some kind of international agreement about technological development. I mean, but mind you, rocket technology was originally used as a weapon, wasn't it? But anyway, the Ottoman Empire ended in 1922, and for the boys at Hizb ut-Tahrir, they are sad that it ended. But what is there to prevent any existing Muslim republic from being declared the caliphate? Because the caliphate is basically the most powerful Islamic in the world. So in theory, if America were to become an Islamic republic and retains its number one superpower status, then it would be the caliphate, wouldn't it? And its president would be its caliph. But what cannot be countenanced is that any absolute monarchy could be included in this title. Because a caliphate is a republic, and a caliph is not a king. And when Muslims themselves forgot about that, it ended badly for them, as in the case of the Ottoman Empire. And we know from Wikipedia that the Ottoman emperor had an imperial harem, and that means he broke the 4 wives max rule. And that's why it crashed and burned. Now, what I'm saying with my secular Quranism is that it's quite easy to work out why these Islamic empires crashed and burned. They broke their own rules. And therefore, uh, we are fortunate in avoiding their mistakes. And that's why I have no fear in saying that my interpretation is as good as their interpretation because their interpretation has failed, and I'm using the principles of the Quran more creatively than actual born normative Muslims. And I suppose these actual born normative Muslims don't want to take it from me, and that's why they avoid me, just like the Christian theologians and just like the rabbis who don't want to engage with either me or any Gentile, which is a sign of cowardice. Because if you really believed in God, then you'd think that there is reward for good in the afterlife, and martyrdom is, well, it is part of Judaism. It even has a name called Hillel, Kiddush Hashem, and Hillel Hashem is basically disgracing the reputation of Jewry, and Hillel Hashem is sanctifying the name of God through being a Jew. Of course, these principles are now largely forgotten about, but I have them at my fingertips. I can easily argue the case. If rabbis won't engage, I could easily make these points on a larger channel than the one I have now, which only has 2 viewers, sadly. So there is everything to fight for, argue for. It is astonishing, though, how cowardly or closed-minded how many people are. Are my points in any way unclear? Do you not understand what I'm saying? I suppose the morons and vegetables who usually come by have no interest in theology because they are atheists and nihilists and assume failure. But I would have thought there would be a few Muslims and Jews and people who are supposed to have some kind of conscience, or just the concerned citizen who wants to solve the problem. It would be nice every now and then to have an intelligent question. I see Judas is here, and now 5 concurrent viewers. But I've come to the end of my update. Oh, I have also been playing around with AI, and I think I've prompted quite a few good songs. Yes, it would be the feds who are hate watching me. At least I'm talking to somebody important and not just, larpers and losers and morons and vegetables. Yes, please send me the Judas Flyjai theme song. Yes, you are important. You have given me a few good ideas in your time. And I know you try. You try to be a good Jew, and you reason with Jewish principles, and I know you are being torn by all these rabbis who give you conflicting information and conflicting views. I know that is what is driving people mad. And that's why it's so important, for the sake of our mental health, to have a supreme authority. So if we're a member of a religious group, we just want them, we just want them to tell us, what the hell we're supposed to believe in and why. But now everyone is saying yes and no at the same time, and this is intolerable and dangerous. Why do they say yes and no at the same time? It's because they're afraid. They're afraid of the consequences of speaking the truth. And, well, somebody ought to do something about it. And I'm saying it's the men. But what the matriarchy has done is confuse men and women so that men behave like women and women behave like men. So nothing actually gets done about solving problems. And another thing I should mention is the debate on Christianity between Adam Green and Arvol. Those of you who know them will know that Arvol wants to use Christianity to promote Christian nationalism, though in his time he has told me he doesn't want to identify as nationalist because he's afraid, I guess, of the feds getting him. But we know why he's doing it. I don't even know why they bother hiding it. You know, it's not like they've changed their views. They used to call themselves the alt-right, and then they call themselves the dissident right. I mean, if the government were to outlaw the dissident right, I guess they'll call themselves something else, and then they'll be hunted down again because they won't have changed their views. So, and also, it's a sign of insecurity and weakness to keep changing your name and your views. It's a sign of transgenderism and a split personality. Jekyll and Hyde, and people who don't know who they are, and people who go out in drag. So it is important that men know that they are men, and once they know they are men, they will have to do what men are supposed to do, which is to defend principles and territory and women and children, if they have any. But what if they don't have any? What if most of them are unmarriageable bachelors? Well, if you're an unmarriageable bachelor, you should, well, try to be a marriageable bachelor. What's wrong with aspiring to be better than you are? And if you haven't got any principles, you should try to acquire them. How are you going to acquire principles? Well, you just go through 5 different moral systems. What if you're, and I'm going to say that they are religious, of course, the 3 Abrahamic religions and the 2 Eastern religions, but I'm saying you can safely dismiss Hinduism and Buddhism, and that leaves you with 3 Abrahamic religions. And you have to kick out Christianity because it's kaput, whether you are Jew or Gentile. And Judaism is not an organized religion, so you might as well give it up as a system of laws, as a moral system capable of supporting the laws of the land in the 21st century. And you're just left with Islam and Sharia. So I'm basically saying, for peace in the Middle East, Jews in Israel should adopt secular Quranism with Israeli characteristics. And this would satisfy Hamas, because Hamas is basically saying Jews in Israel should live under Sharia. And but of course the Jews can say, well, we're going to interpret Sharia for ourselves. We're not going to have your kind of Sharia. We're going to interpret it better, and they would be able to quarrel with that, because what you're doing is possibly obeying God's laws better than people who call themselves Muslims, because obviously they've crashed and burned because they broke their own rules. Yes, I see. Judas is still talking about man as freedman who um, who is labelled a heretic because he likened God to a cat lady, basically. He said God was lonely and he created us to amuse himself and be worshipped, or words to that effect. But I knew a long time ago that it was actually through a Muslim or somebody giving a talk about Islam, saying that we are not to regard ourselves as the pets of Allah, because that would suggest that he was human and we're not to regard God as in any way human. So that's fair enough. Yes, I know rabbis always disagree, but you do need a final authority because otherwise you will have this two Jews, three opinions problem. I mean, not that Muslims don't. I mean, the Sunnis. I'm so glad we're back on the subject of Sunnis. So basically, the Sunnis are not going to um, acknowledge the supreme leader of Iran as the caliph, but I'm saying they should. They should if they cared for their fellow Muslims, because the rule must always have been the idea that the caliph was the most powerful Muslim ruler in the world. And it can't be Turkey because Turkey is a secular state and also it's a NATO member state. And, well, for all sorts of reasons, it can't be Turkey and or Indonesia, which is apparently the most populous Muslim country in the world. So it's got to be Iran. And I'm saying, well, supposing America were to become an Islamic republic, then and remain the world's number one superpower, then the caliphacy, the caliphate would pass on to America or whoever is the most powerful Islamic republic. So that might be a reason for Americans wanting to become an Islamic republic to I guess have one over Muslims, in Asia and say, look, you know, we're the caliphate because we're now an Islamic republic, and therefore our president must be the caliph. So there. So it's something to consider for people who care about white pride, I suppose. Okay, I've got something from Judas. I actually haven't. It hasn't arrived. But maybe he means Facebook. No. Oh, I can't see anything. I cannot see anything from Judas. So I'll have to deal with it another time. But anyway, Rabbi Friedman is Chabad, and Chabad you know, they've disgraced themselves basically. So we can't take anything they say seriously. So before I go, I should admit I'm going to talk about my AI creations. I should give you my AI account, my Suno account, so you can check out whatever creations I have. It's a lot of fun, really. I mean, I'm quite pleased with what I've been doing. Oh, how do I do it? Okay, I'll just give you my latest. This is secular Quranism in electropop. Let me give you the title of it. A Rebel Reverie. I mean, it's interesting that my musical contacts hate AI. I think it's because they feel particularly threatened by it, but I think it's pretty acceptable, and they sound quite authentic. So it is currently free at the moment, but they'll probably soon charge for it because it's so well addictive. All right, then I have spoken for over 41 minutes. I think I've exhausted the subjects I wanted to tell you about. Thank you, Judas, for coming, and I look forward to your communication. I'll just highlight a few of your comments. To show there's no hard feelings. All right, then.